I'd like to welcome everybody to a nice sunny day here, April 8th, in our 235th episode of the Minnesota Outdoor Skills and Stewardship Series. My name is Benji Cohen. I'm joined by Assistant Area Wildlife Manager Greg Henderson today, who is also an avid turkey hunter. So we're just going to talk a little bit about turkeys today. It's one of my favorite times of the year, Greg, so I'm really excited to learn more from you about how turkeys are doing in Minnesota and get some hunting tips and kind of get the heart pumping and ready to go for this spring. So I'll
Yeah,
turn it over to you.
thanks, Benji. Yeah, me too. I'm getting excited for it here, and being as our first season time period starts next week, it's that time of year. So I agree, this is a great time of year and a good time to be out in the woods. So, as Benji said, yeah, good afternoon, folks. I'm Greg Henderson. I'm the Assistant Wildlife Manager here in the Detroit Lakes Area Wildlife Office. Our office serves the counties of Clay, Norman, Mahnomen, and Western Becker County. I'm a lifelong hunter, but I've only really started turkey hunting in 2004, and that's largely in part because there just weren't turkeys at that time in the areas that I hunt, close to home. So, that's kind of when I started actually turkey hunting, and that's quite a few years ago now, of course. But yeah, so that's where I got my start going after these great birds. Um, so today, I'm just gonna, this is kind of what I hope to cover here. I'm gonna go over a little bit about the history of turkeys in Minnesota, kind of cover the reintroductions that we had, and the turkey characteristics and things like that. Just some small little tidbits that I think I can pass on to folks that maybe they haven't, maybe they're a long time turkey hunter, maybe they haven't thought about some of the things hopefully that I'll talk about here today. And then get into some of the turkey hunting things. There's so much out there as far as tactics and things. Obviously, there won't be enough time to cover all that today. Those that know me well know that I would love to talk for 2 weeks straight about turkeys, but obviously we don't have time for that. But these are the things that I hope to cover today. So with regards to the history here in Minnesota, the map on the left side of your screen kind of shows what we had done with regards to trap and transplant in the state. Initial attempts to reestablish a turkey population started in the 1920s with pen-reared birds, but those attempts largely failed. Our first, I guess, success story would be from, and it may be a little hard to read, but the first releases were 29 turkeys from Missouri in the 1970s, and from there, those birds really took off, and we kind of were able to use our own birds in Minnesota at that time to, with help from the National Wild Turkey Federation, spread them northward through some trap and transplant efforts. Um, Minnesota's turkey population has continued to expand through much of the state, and today a favorable habitat mix, has pushed turkeys well beyond their pre-settlement location, which was that very southeasterly portion of the state there. So we're doing pretty good with regards to turkeys and turkey populations in the state. It's been a real nice success story for us here, and um, really really um, I think fun, and folks are enjoying our seasons here. Some of the stuff I'm sharing with you today, like I say, this is historic stuff. These maps are a little bit older. They aren't totally up to date. Obviously, it goes through 2007. Our releases, as you can see in this slide here, the last ones were in the mid 2000s, and they were in the northern fringe of quality turkey habitat in Minnesota, or what was thought to be the northern fringe. So you can see here we bring school groups out and things like that. It was a good time for all to see those birds take off. So a mixture of habitats, including hardwoods, agriculture, and some pine, is very important for wild turkeys and survival in Minnesota. However, snow depths is the most important factor in determining their range. This line was an early line. It was identified with the help of modeling and some managers who have retired now and things. We plugged this into a model and came up with kind of this line here where the birds would have the best chance for survival. Um, this line is just that. It's a line. It was a model, and not all models are perfect. Obviously, we do have turkeys that are well beyond this line, and pretty much in every county in Minnesota now there's been some sightings. So that's encouraging and pretty neat. Again, here's one of those little bit older maps that I'm sharing with you today. This one was a deer hunter survey in 2006, and in which case deer hunters were asked to report turkey sightings, and this map was the result of that. And as you can see, most of those dots in there fall below that line that I showed in the previous slide. So, although that line isn't, perfect, I do think, and I think, in the future, it'll probably be a line that we can look to and kind of use because, again, traditionally those snow depths in that northeastern part of Minnesota get a little bit inhibiting for birds to find food and things like that, and we are aware that we've had some loss due to winters in a few locations, although that's been, um, you know, really just a small amount of birds that we've heard about over the years. So with regards to like turkey populations and where we're at in the state, obviously, I've heard folks often say they're everywhere, and that's true. It's like I said, it's been a really really big success story for us. They are pretty much in every county, or can be seen in many different counties in Minnesota. Obviously, some areas are going to have more than others. But with regards to the actual turkey population, that's something that we're in the DNR. We're working on getting a handle on what exactly that number is, and that's a difficult thing to do. Other states struggle with those population numbers as well with certain species. We certainly would like to get some trends, and we can see this anecdotally. We see birds, everywhere, we'll say, right? But anyway, I wanted to point this out. This will be the third year of our citizen science effort to help us monitor population trends. Reports are collected via phone, apps, or on the website from July through August. So it's not open right now, but this is what the page will look like when it is. This type of information is helpful for us in helping us set harvest regulations. So the public can get involved, and we certainly encourage them to do so. And I just wanted to point out in this particular picture, this one will come up again later in my presentation, but this is a hen with her brood, and we'll talk about that beard on her to come here. So this is just a quick map. These are subspecies identified in North America. You can see that the biggest blue on the map there are the eastern subspecies. So there's different turkeys throughout the country here, and down to the south there. But in Minnesota, Minnesota is home to that eastern subspecies. So I'll talk a little bit now about some of the characteristics of that bird because there are a few differences between those different subspecies. So this particular slide, know your wild turkey tom. There's a few things I'd like to point out here. The first one are those dagger-like spurs on this particular bird here. Most turkeys do have spurs. The hens do not. Although it's not impossible. There's probably been a hen out there that has small spurs. But one thing I really want to talk about is the snood. And the snood is an appendage, a fleshy appendage that can cover the beak of a turkey. In this particular picture, it's long and extended, but we'll talk about that a little bit. And you can see in these bottom pictures the little fleshy appendage there. The snood is marked on this bird. So yeah, a few turkey characteristics here, and I have a few slides that talk about that. So the beard is a modified feather on a turkey. Some birds may have multiple beards, like this one did in this picture here. And again, pointing back to that snood on these two birds on the left here, it's very short on these birds. So I was trying to think of some things when Benji asked, for me to talk about this, what some people may not think about. Maybe a hunter that has hunted these birds for a long time knows this, but some people may not pay attention to, certain characteristics of the birds. And that snood length on these two birds indicates that they're alerted to my presence. I took this picture. Um, it can help a hunter or anyone for that matter judge the demeanor of the bird um, when they're relaxed. Here's another example of that. This bird's elongated snood, which is it's a little harder to see in this picture, but it's engorged with blood there and elongated and over the top of the beak. Um, his elongated snood there is kind of indicating he's ready to fight. He's going up to that decoy and he's ready to put a show on there, and he did. I have this hunt on video. He attacked that Jake decoy there. But a hunter in this situation has some time. There's no need to rush the shot in this situation. This bird is not, we were in a blind in this case. He wasn't alert to our presence. We had some time to just watch him do his thing and get a good ethical shot on this bird. So, that again, that snood length can sometimes help us with that as hunters to know what mood that bird is in. Just another example here. This snoods are elongated on these birds. They are in their element, showing off for the ladies in this case. So that's just another example. And this I promise will be the last one on the snood length, but short snood here, it can mean the bird is alert, it can mean it's wary, or just on the move. They don't have their snoods elongated and always hanging like that when they're just walking, from area to area. This happens to be a young Tom here, a Jake, but again, the snood can, that bird can extend that in just a few seconds, really. So it's kind of an interesting thing. The other thing, which is a little bit harder, I should have had a video here that I'd like to point out, is when the bird is in this state, not all strutting like these two are, but uh, if they do get alerted or spooked in the case that they see you or see movement or something like that, they will quickly pull their feathers in, out of this strutting pose, and their feathers will get very tight to their body, like this bird. And one thing that a hunter or again any bird watcher can note if they're near a group of turkeys, when they do a wing flip, and what I mean by that is they'll tuck those wings in alongside their body. When they do that, they're only going to be around for a few more seconds. When they totally tuck all those feathers in, and the last of those feathers to tuck in are their wings, um, that's a sign to us that they're going to be moving. They're going to be getting out of there fairly quickly. So something I wanted to share, something I've seen, unfortunately sometimes when I'm trying to get a bird, but it is something that they all do. So it's a characteristic that we should pay attention to as bird watchers or hunters. Again, here's that picture of the hen and her brood. Um, I've heard 7 to 10% of hens may carry that beard. I've seen it a few times in the wild, but it is highly variable. Kind of depends on the flocks and things like that. It might be a little more prevalent in some groups of birds than others. But as you can see here, the bird on the right, I mean, they're a little bit browner in nature. Um, you know, they generally don't carry that beard. So turkey hunting here. So now we can switch to the fun part of the talk, or I guess something that is a little bit funner to talk about for me anyway. Um, I guess the first thing listeners need to know is there's no way we can cover everything in this short talk today. There's lots of resources out there. I kind of struggle with that preparing for this talk. Like, there's so many different resources that people can get some information from, and I certainly encourage that, because by no means am I the expert on all things here. Some of the stuff I'm talking about today, I know there's folks out there that would disagree with me, but that's common amongst hunters, and you know that I will introduce some things that where some things where I've been successful, um, but they by no means are an entire list of how a person would hunt turkeys. Um, you know, these resources are out there. We have some of it, and I know these will be put in the chat, but there is a web page listed there. We have some pretty good videos on our DNR web page already that kind of discuss all things related to turkey hunting, and there's some really good advice on there, and some of which that I won't have time to cover today. So I encourage folks to check that out. So with regards to our turkey season, again, it starts here right next week with that period A, that first time period, and youth hunters can start on that date as well as archery hunters. So, good luck to those who are going out for that first one. Um, Typically, just work-wise and other things, and past hunts and things, I typically go for the B season, but that's just the way it works out for me generally. So this is what our spring season dates look like. And here's our current permit area map. You can hunt turkeys throughout the state. One thing I want to point out, if folks go in to buy a turkey license, if they indicate that they hunt in permit 507, that person at the till will ask, what permit area. And that's just for us in the DNR to know where people are hunting generally. You aren't restricted to that permit area, so you can hunt outside of those areas. And just a little bit again on how our turkeys are doing, and this kind of indicates that through our hunting harvest. You can see that that line has ticked up. That'd be the bottom line in this slide, and then the top line is the permits issued or the number of permits that people have purchased. So you can see it's been ticking up over the years here ever since that first season in 1978, obviously. So good news for those of us that turkey hunt, and uh, that's been the trend. So this is one of those older maps, and again, I put this one on there just kind of to show um, a little bit about the success, how success generally tracks when a new population, and I call turkeys a fairly new population to the state because if you think about the time they've been here, um, it isn't that long really you know uh, as we think about our lifetime and things. But this is an older map showing good success statewide, but exceptional success in 2015, kind of on that northern edge where turkeys were new and newly hunted. Um, I wouldn't say they're dumb; they're very wary birds, but when a population of critters is hunted for the first time or first few years, they can be a little susceptible, and you can see that if you look at some of these maps. Um, Currently, this is what our success rates look like. This is our total permit sales for 2025. Were the second highest ever recorded, and that shows there in that first line of 61,834. And then you can see our harvest and our harvest success for all of the seasons. That's the general season, the youth season, and the archery season is right around 27%, which is considered pretty good. That's a quality turkey hunt in any state. So here, if folks want to grab their phones and things, you certainly can steal this from me. But these are my 6 keys to success. By no means are they an extensive, the only thing I've ever done turkey hunting. And I know this is where I can probably, almost see people shaking their heads because they may hunt differently than I do. And I've certainly not just stuck to the six things on this list here, but woodsmanship is at the top for me. That's going to be a tough one to explain. Here, I have one with nature, how you adapt to the woods. I did write down the actual definition that I pulled up on my phone. The comprehensive skill set of navigating, surviving, and hunting in the wilderness by reading terrain, weather, and animal behavior. That's a tough one. It's not always somebody that's a little gray in the beard like I am. It could be a younger hunter, but it is a very important thing I think that we need to think about as hunters when we're out there chasing whatever critter we're after, reading that terrain, knowing what that animal behavior is. And some of those things are learned, some of them can be taught. Some of those things can be picked up off of YouTube video and just watching successes or failures from other hunters. So I've done plenty of that myself and learned some things from those resources. So the second one there, scouting, hunt where birds are. That's pretty obvious, right? If you're seeing birds in an area, obviously, your chances are going to be better. If you just kind of throw a pin at a map and go, the turkeys may not be there at that time, or they may not even occupy that portion of woods. So definitely try to hunt where the birds are. Um, Patterning birds, that can be a little controversial amongst turkey hunters. Some people in some areas where they're hunted heavily, it's a little harder to do that. But in most areas that I have hunted, again, this is my list. It's how I've been successful in the past. They can be a little predictable. If I'm seeing a couple toms come out into a corner of a field, several days in a row, chances are they may do that again. Leading up to my hunt day. Obviously, if it's 4 weeks ahead of my hunt and they're doing that, they may have changed that pattern by the time my time to hunt is. So, roost birds. Um, Birds heard or seen right before or just after sunset will most likely be right in that area in the morning. So if I see a tom, late in the evening walking along a field edge, well, he's going to be darn close to there in the morning, unless something unforeseen happens and an owl attack in the night or something. It's hard to know for sure always, and these birds can really uh, uh, do some things that we don't expect sometimes. So. Gain private land permission. This isn't for everybody. We definitely have some excellent public land options for people, and I've hunted public land myself on several occasions. But again, just a list of my own here. Over the years, I have been able to, and I encourage folks to try because often birds are less pressured on private land, and there are some no's, but you do get some yeses occasionally as well. So and then have a plan and be prepared to deviate from that plan. That one can't be stressed enough either because you may have a certain idea in mind and it just doesn't go your way that day. So just maybe have plan Bs, plan Cs, things like that. So I did want to touch again on that example of woodsmanship. These are just a few things that I think have helped me and little examples of what that woodsmanship means. With regards to turkeys. Turkeys use trails. They're going to use the easiest path through the woods. That might be an ATV trail, that might be a logging trail or a hiking trail, and even a deer trail. They don't like to cross fences or water. That's not to say that they never will, but they do look for crossings. They look for openings and fences, maybe an open gate even, or maybe it's an older fence that portion of it, a tree has knocked down part of it or whatever. Turkeys will find those areas, they know about them, and that's how they cross fences. Obviously, they can fly, but they prefer to walk through things like that. And they'll even use beaver dams to cross water areas. Um, these are again just some little things that I've thought about. Male turkeys prefer openings or open ridge tops to display. When they're trying to look impressive to females, they'll find some of those open edges, open fields, open ridge tops again in some open timber to show off and things like that. And this one is kind of again, for those people who have turkey hunted a while, hens go to toms. That's kind of the natural way that it's supposed to happen. But a hint, toms also go to hens. That's why we use decoys sometimes and things like that, and are calling like a hen. Um, I've seen it where they're roosting together and the toms will hit the ground first and kind of start strutting, and then yeah, the hens they fly down. I guess that's going to the toms and then they go off together. But also obviously as hunters, we're trying to call that tom to us, and when they don't have receptive hens with them, obviously they can be a little susceptible to those calls and say, well, I hear one here, so I'm going to go to her. But there's a lot more to be said about that, and if folks have questions about it, I can try to touch on some of that, at the end here. Um, just going to touch a little bit about some of the gear. Again, in the advent of time, we don't have time to go through everything here. I certainly, like I said, can talk about some of these things, and I own quite a bit of gear myself. Um, if we have time for questions, and hopefully we will. But blinds, I think, are often necessary with youth and some elderly. You can get away with a lot of movement, in my opinion, in blinds. Archery hunters find them useful for drawing their bows. So you can get away with that movement of drawing a bow inside a blind. Um, here was a couple hunts where, we were successful using a blind. And blinds, this is again, some of this is personal preference and personal ideas. I believe blinds excel in open areas. I know where birds have maybe been hunted a little heavier and things like that. I've heard stories about birds, being shy of blinds. I will say deer have been, in my experience, when I've popped up a blind the day of. But in these particular photos here, there was no blind there set up ahead of time. We did not brush them in, had no negative response whatsoever from the birds. I've had them walk so close to the blind that I can actually feel them, their noise, their spitting, their drumming. Um, in my experience, with birds I've hunted in the areas I've hunted, I have not had negative responses to blinds. The only time I will say that I have is when they can silhouette us inside the blind. So I would encourage folks, be careful with how many windows you have open, because if they can see through two of those windows and see you move in there, it's just like you're sitting in the wide open, and they will pick up on that movement, and the hunt is over at that point. So um, the window in the left frame there, my daughter preferred to shoot standing with her bow, so that's why we had that higher window open, and it worked out in this hunt. So yeah, you can do certain things with the windows there. Decoys. I haven't always used decoys, and I know some folks are really opposed to using them because, again, where maybe birds are pressured or have seen a lot of decoys, they can have a little bit of a negative effect on them. Most of the time when I've been on hunts, I have not seen that. They can work in the right circumstances, but they aren't always necessary, especially in heavier cover and things. You kind of calling as a hen and things, that Tom will be searching you out. And as we green up here and we get more leaves, not as necessary maybe to have you get them within effective range just because the foliage is a little bit heavier and things like that. This particular decoy was called the breeder hen, and obviously that's kind of what's going on in the one picture there. So it worked. And I could go on and on about calls here, but there's numerous call options out there, including box calls. That's the one on the far left here, and they're known for being a little bit louder. Your diaphragm calls, that's something you put in your mouth. They're a little bit more difficult for beginners to master, but they're not impossible by any means. And then you have pot calls, this is an example of a pot call here. There's slate, glass, crystal, probably some other things out there too, with regards to pot calls. And then this one on the right here is, I guess I call them a push pull. It's considered one of the easiest to use. It's a good call for beginners. I also often stuff this wing in my vest. That wing can be used to mimic a fly down or a fighting behavior in turkeys, which can sometimes draw them close enough for an effective shot. Um, I'm going to take a quick drink here because the last one on my list is not shown in the picture, but it's natural voice, and I do use my voice, so I'll give you an example of that. Hopefully it comes over well. So I practiced that. I had a step grandpa who had domestic turkeys, and I used to practice in front of his tom barn. And it isn't perfect, but it definitely has worked for me. I killed my bird last spring just using my voice. So um, just something fun to do, I guess. And I prefer a Jake decoy when I do use one. It doesn't always have to look pretty. Um, this is one I just it's a bird that one of myself or one of my kids harvested, and I used the tail fan from that and kind of put it over a kind of a smaller Jake decoy, and um, was successful trying this one time on a tom. So I extend my turkey season by getting a little creative. The call on the right is a wing bone call that's actually made from a gobbler that I harvested in 2020, I think. And there's examples on how to make one of those on the internet if anyone's interested. But those calls you actually suck in to make a turkey sound. But they're kind of fun to try and use as well. Turkey hunting in other states. So beyond Minnesota, um, I've done a little bit of this. I can't say I'm any expert on going out of state and trying this in other places, but again, it doesn't matter where, what state you're in, that woodsmanship still applies. The tactics and gear are similar that people would use in most states. But however, the terrain can be quite a bit different. These are a couple examples here on some recent hunts, one from South Dakota and one from Wyoming. I'm not getting any younger, and the some of this stuff to scale some of these hillsides and things, it does take a little bit of effort. And often, what we have found in going out there is these birds do want to be uphill. They want to be on some of these benches and tops and things like that. Um, they typically will, move up. In our opinion, I guess when I say I've mostly been out there with my son, um, and honestly, he's the one kind of helping me and pulling me up some of these hills. But but anyway, yeah. So there's some pretty steep terrain out there. We're all aware of that, but it can be pretty fun. And if folks can remember the subspecies map, there's some different turkeys to chase out there. So um, in these cases, we're out there after the Merriams, and that's a picture of one I killed last spring out there. Again, up on a bench top. It's pretty flat once you get up on top like that, and those turkeys and through the sign, the scratchings and things like that, we were able to see they were hanging out there quite a bit, and I was able to crawl up there and able to harvest this one last spring. Also, there's some nice green valleys and things like that where birds will spend some time in, and that's an example here in South Dakota of one of those. So yeah, I just want to um, show folks a little bit of different options out there. There are some other states have similar price tags to what our non-resident tags are in Minnesota. So there are, if you really get into it and want to try some other areas, like I said, I'm not a real accomplished out-of-state turkey hunter, but I've done it a few times and certainly will do it again in the future here. So it's a different option for people. So that's kind of it, uh, uh, Benji. I appreciate being able to talk today, and I do have my contact information there for folks. Hopefully, there's some comments that came in. I certainly, like I mentioned, I love turkey hunting. I could talk about it a long time, and I've been around long enough in the DNR that, some of that trap and transplant, happened while I was working and it was part of some of that stuff. So, but any of that information, I kind of touched on some of it. Any of that information is on our website if folks are interested in kind of researching, past successes and success rates and harvest and things like that. All those things are on our website under our turkey hunting page. And then if you dive a little deeper, there's all kinds of information on the trap and transplant program, when that started, how we really we're successful in getting this cool bird, to move in the state, and it's kind of taken care of itself here the last several years, and been a pretty cool success story. So
It was almost our national bird, right? Wasn't it Benjamin Franklin that was
yeah,
pushing
so
for the turkey to be our national bird?
yeah, I think he called it a noble bird or something like that. I've read some different things on that. There was some talk about that, but and then you hear stories that it, maybe was, maybe wasn't. It's hard to say what he was thinking back then, but yeah, they're cool. I mean, these three here displaying. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they just it's pretty exciting to see that this time of year.
Yeah, so we got several people tuning in, and if you're interested in getting out there turkey hunting, maybe if you don't even want to start turkey hunting, if you get out there with somebody or just get out in the woods, we have a comment in here like there's a lot of turkeys in our woods in West St. Paul. Can't probably hunt in West St. Paul where you are, but getting out there, and I think when I started turkey hunting, the struggle about learning when to yelp or when to cluck and when to purr and stuff, but you got to kind of figure out, and being just around turkeys is helpful. So like you said, you learned a mouth call in a turkey barn. So
Yeah,
if you could teach
yeah.
me that trick someday, that'd be great. But
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that advice for years. You just listen to them. Sometimes a duck hunter might go to a park and just listen to ducks talk. And become a better
yeah,
caller that way. And um, yeah, just being out there, kind of hearing the sounds and things like that, hearing what a real bird sounds like and what their cadence is and things like that is really important.
yeah, definitely. I think like you say, it's not something, I don't think any hunting you can just walk out and do very successfully right off the bat. It takes learning. You talked about woodmanship, but learning the bird habitat, learning how they react, learning to read the sign. All that is involved in woodsmanship, and spending more time out there is always going to pay dividends in the long run for you. So
Yeah, no, exactly. It's it's something that woodsmanship, like I mentioned, it's just something that's really hard to put a definition to, or it means something different to everybody. And
yep,
it's just those slides that you develop. They may be a mistake that you made in the past, or it may be a success story. But if you log those things and log those memories, you can draw on those when it comes time for a new hunt or a new bird. And it sometimes does take time to develop that. Um, but again, people can do that through videos and things too that can all
yep.
contribute and help.
It's all building knowledge. So
Hmm.
we have somebody tuning in from Florida. So welcome. They're down there chasing Osceolas right now.
Awesome, awesome, yeah.
Coming back up here for the last 2 weeks of the season. He's wondering if you have any specific tips for turkey hunting up in the Iron Range.
So specific ticks for up there, I guess I kind of alluded to it a little bit in that one older map that showed those success rates. Birds in the Iron Range, and I'm here in Detroit Lakes, which is not very close to the Iron Range, but I've spent a little time up there, and those birds are, I would say, very new, with regards to, um, they haven't been there very long. Like I mentioned, I didn't start hunting birds around the Detroit Lakes area until 2004, and that's because we really didn't have a huntable population or open permit areas. And the northeastern part of the state honestly wasn't even uh, open to turkey hunting that too many years ago, and fairly recently we've opened the whole state. So if you can, it's a little bit, obviously there's more, maybe a little heavier conifer cover up there. I guess what I would do is just, if you know people, or if you're able to get there to do some scouting and things like that. um, again, it's just going to be trying to find where those birds are. Like I mentioned, you want to hunt where birds are, and I don't think they're throughout the entire region up there. So, if you do find where they're at, the good news is they're going to be a newer, maybe not as hunted, not as pressured. So they may respond a little better to calling, may respond better to decoys and that type of thing. hopefully I've helped you with that question. Um, but yeah, find the
Yeah,
birds, and you should be in business, I would think. So
yeah. Good luck up there. So I've never hunted up on their range for turkeys, but
yeah, I don't know
another
many that have, honestly, but yeah,
yeah, like you said, it's new. So
yep.
now we had another question. Given the winter we've had, which has been a little off, which part of the upcoming season might be the best week for the hunt? That's the age-old question, right? Which week do
Yeah,
you select for vacation?
yeah, exactly. No, it's a tough one. It's a question that we have heard many times, and I think about myself. I typically just, you know, because of work, I do that B period, but some usually we see the hunting pressure and our hunters choosing those first few seasons. Obviously, there's more birds on the landscape at that time, um, and and it really is a little bit weather dependent on where the birds are at, because right now, I guess you can't see behind me here, but we still had about, 8 inches of snow on the ground, and I expect that most of that will be gone by next Wednesday. But, I've seen that happen a few times when our A period starts, even as late as our C period, we've still had snow on the ground, and birds, obviously, they'll flock up in the wintertime, and we see some bigger groups of birds that are flocked together, and there is a pecking order amongst turkeys. So once they start feeling their oats, so to speak, they're gonna start separating and things like that. And I think some of that had already started to happen before this most recent snowfall. Um, so that's a difficult question to answer, but and it's a, I guess, somewhat I'll say controversial thing, because some people are like, well, I never hunt early. I don't like the early seasons because the hens are not on nests and things, and that can be something that as turkey hunters we think about too. Once those hens do start to sit on a nest, they're no longer available for that male, to find anymore. They're not receptive, obviously. So those later time periods can be, where you have a good population of toms and male birds around. I mean, you know, just a few yelps and you might have one running towards you because they're looking at that time. So um, again, with my email listed on this last slide here, whoever asked that question, we could certainly get into more detail and talk about what the weather conditions are currently in the areas maybe where you're planning on hunting, and maybe narrow that down a little bit for you if you're interested. Just yeah, give me an email.
Yeah. Um, for the person that was down in Florida hunting the Iron Range, our Jessica from our tower office chimed in and said, "You're more than welcome to call the tower office and ask for tips and suggestions up there." So you're more than welcome to do that. I'll see if I can find your message and send that number along to you too. We had another anonymous comment. This is a great program. You should get Linda on here to talk about this, but this person did a DNR mentored hunt a few years ago and had a great experience. Highly recommend it to new hunters. We do a couple mentored turkey hunts every year. So if you're new to turkey hunting, please reach out to me. I can put you in contact with the people that run those hunts. One down in the southeast. I know we do one in the metro area, Carlos Avery area, I believe. So that is a great way to learn from other people that are passionate about it and get all your questions answered and whatnot. So,
Yeah, and often they'll have the equipment and things too. So yeah, those
yep.
are those are really cool opportunities, I think. And
Um,
thanks for chiming in, Jessica. I know you, so yeah, that's one thing that can't be understated enough. Those of us that work out of area offices for the DNR, our doors are open. Give us a call. Like, send us an email. We definitely get that type of inquiries every year, and are willing to share where we've seen birds, or obviously I'm not going to tie them to a tree for anybody, but I certainly would be willing to give them some ideas. So
yeah. I think, Greg, if you want, you can pull your slide down there if you want.
sure, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Another question, we might run out of time of questions. Yes, some good ones coming in. What is the benefit of applying for a turkey license versus buying over the counter? I know that's changed in the last several years. We used to do a lottery for turkeys. Now you can buy them over the counter. Um, what's your thoughts on applying or buying over the counter?
So the applying is only in a few spots in Minnesota now. We used to have to do that throughout the whole state. You had to apply for, in our permit areas, I shared that map. They're much larger than they used to be. They used to be kind of associated with where our deer permit areas were. But as far as the applying goes, there's only a couple spots for that. And, it's only the first couple time periods, if I recall correctly. So that may help a little bit with regards to like hunting pressure, because there's just a limited amount of people that would get drawn for those first few time periods, and that's going to limit the number of people that are out in those areas. So yeah, that's a good question. That, like I say, there's only a couple smaller areas in the state where you have to apply anymore. So other than that, it's just buy over the counter. And I know since we've done that, the buy over the counter, often people are like, well, we're going to get a snowstorm, you know, in the next few days, and they haven't
Yeah.
purchased their license, and it's not a bad move, honestly. If all of a sudden you're going to get dumped with 8, 10 inches of snow, you might hold off on buying that turkey license for that
Yeah.
time period.
I know one of the areas I hunt, we got if you want a first or second slot, you almost have to do the lottery for it. And then we can buy over the counter if they don't fill up. And that's usually later in the season. So, um, and that's over in Wisconsin or hunting over there. So all
Sure.
depends
Yeah.
on where you're hunting and where you want to go too. So, and like you said, if
Hmm.
check other states, if you're going in other states, they might have different policies and rules on that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, another person um, asked, where do they nest? When predators go after them, where do they go?
Well, I've come across a few nests, out and about, and they'll use field edges, they'll use hedgerows, they'll also they don't make a real elaborate nest. It's on the ground. They aren't up in trees. I guess just to answer that question. But I've seen them in open hardwoods, just near a tree. So it's pretty variable, depending on the habitat that they're in, where they're gonna lay that nest. They won't do it out in the middle of at least to my knowledge, I've never seen them out in the middle of a egg field or something like that. It's typically going to be on an edge or in some brushy cover, or just like I say, highly variable. But yeah,
Right. And they like to, you were talking about roosting earlier. They like to spend the nights up in trees.
yeah,
Get some
hmm
pine trees around some property I hunt, and that's usually where I'll see them up in those big pine trees, big branches they can get into easy, older ones. But and a person here that's a hunter that must hunt like I do, lives in north central Minnesota, sees turkeys all spring and summer, and then they disappear as soon as you go out to hunt them in the fall and the winter or when you're out there hunting. I hunt a forest on ATV trails, but the public land I hunt, but the public land I hunt is surrounded by swamp. Where do the turkeys go? So that's the age
yeah.
old question too.
It is. Those darn things. Like I said, I shared some of the ways I've been successful, but I should have had a slide in there about how I failed too, or how the birds have done things I didn't expect and things like that. Um, they, they live out there 365 days a year. So, as far as like movement and where they're going, some days it's just like they don't care. They're just going to go wherever. But I did have a slide on how they can be a little predictable as well. And, the food sources and things like that will dictate some of that predictability. But as a turkey hunter, it can be frustrating at times. You think you have an idea or a plan and you think it's going to be foolproof, and all of a sudden they do something totally opposite of what you'd hoped. Um, but yeah, that's a tough one. Where exactly they're going, it's hard to know without
Yeah,
have it with a little more context, I think. But
You know,
Yeah,
when my girls were a little younger, we'd hunt the youth season down at my parents' place. And the youth season, you can hunt any of the time slots. So you get
yep,
a little bit early, hunt any of the time slots. Invariably, the weekend we'd want to go down there, they would be, they kind of live in a little valley and they'd be at the neighbor's property. So it's like, talk to my dad and be like, okay, where are you seeing the turkeys? Oh, I'm seeing them over in so and so's property. Okay, when they come back towards yours, let me know. Then we'll come down there, and they would. It was kind of predictable. They would every 3, 4, 5 days they would kind of make a circle around the valley, and they'd be back towards my parents' place. And I'm like, then we got a place we can go and hunt close to home and not have to travel too far, which is nice. So
sure.
sometimes they just like to move around and have a little variety. So
Yeah, and your story actually triggered one for me. Um, you know, and this is the fun part for me. I like telling turkey hunting stories and turkey, situations I've been in. I was with my son a few years ago and had turkeys gobbling all morning, and they didn't cooperate for us. They didn't come to the decoys. He was using a bow, so we had to get him in a little closer range, and actually had a coyote bust the whole group of them, and they flew up in trees around us. But then, after a while, that coyote left, and they calmed down and flew down again, but they didn't fly to us. We knew they were close, but at that point, we kind of like, well, where are they? Kind of like the question was, where did they go? They couldn't have gone too far, but they weren't making noise anymore. So, it's like, well, what do we do? Do we pick up and leave, or had intel from the farmer that they usually hang out there, most of the day and things. And um, I just decided, hey, I know that this drops off again. Maybe knowing the landscape a little bit, I knew that there was a ridge top and it dropped off on the back side of that. And I kind of got in the woods, through the backside of the blind type of thing that we were in, and using trees and cover to my advantage, I was able to actually see the birds. And the wind had picked up, and they had kind of dropped off the edge of that higher knob, and were just below us there, but not making a peep, not even one sound, and what we ended up doing was actually just picking that blind up and walking with the blind. We were inside of it, just closer to where they were, and um, just got within, you hear within their bubble. I've heard turkey hunters talk about that before, and that, in my opinion, that is a thing. If you get within that comfort level or their bubble, they were happened to be with hens, and once we did that and started calling, they responded immediately, and they hadn't been calling for quite some time. And actually, that was one of the pictures I shared there, the one where the tom was about ready to fight with the decoy. Yeah, that was that particular hunt, and it ended up working out for us. So they sometimes aren't far if they've been around. Maybe they're just happen to be with hens, and um, they're just not making any noise.
again, we're just about out of time here. So I get one I can answer here. Somebody asked, they joined late. They want to know when they can watch the webinar. So visit our website, mndnr.gov/discover, and search our archives, or visit our YouTube page. It'll be up there first, Minnesota DNR on the YouTube page. Check that out. That's the easiest way to see it. There's another person that asked for a little bit more information on turkeys themselves, the lives, where they live, brood size, and whatnot. It wasn't exactly the topic for today, but I'm going to refer you back to one of our other webinars. So again, go to our archives, mndnr/discover, or mndnr.gov/discover, excuse me, and click on or search archives for turkeys. And we did a great turkey 2023 was the 50th anniversary of the reintroduction of turkeys, and we talked about the reintroduction and some of the mentored hunts and some of the conservation efforts that went into that. So that would be a great webinar to get some of that information on. So somebody asking about incubation period on a turkey. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, do you?
Yeah, 28 days.
Okay.
Yep. So, yep, that's what it is generally for a turkey.
All right. You got one more sneaking in here. Gino asked, when hunting, how long should I wait before leaving a spot if I don't hear a gobbler responding to my calls?
Another one of those tough ones. Each turkey hunter is going to have a different response to that. I recently talked to a colleague of mine that does a lot of turkey hunting and is pretty successful with the folks he goes with. And he said he generally just sits for 45 minutes if he's not having a good response or what he considers a bird responding or doing what he'd like to see it do. He'll get up and try to reposition on that bird. And I've certainly done that as well. I didn't have it in a slide, but it's kind of, some people call it like a run and gun technique.
Mhm.
I've also sat for, when I had little kids, you can't, it's harder to move around with them, right? It's harder to hide their movements and things. And um, that one particular picture of my son, with the blind, he was 8 years old when he killed his first bird, and we actually sat from before sun up till 10:30 in the morning, and that's when the bird came. Again, some intel from the farmer in that case. He said he always sees birds in that corner of the field, and that's all I had to go on really. I heard a bunch of gobbling in the morning, and he kind of those birds went kind of the opposite direction, honestly. But we just waited them out, and I had enough snacks and things along, and we were able to put it together there, and so you can use some patience too.
And I think it kind of depends on where you're hunting too. When I'm
Yeah.
hunting
Hmm.
public land, I tend to move, I guess, more frequently than I do if like I have my daughter with or something, and I know turkeys are going to be there. I'm going to sit here and be patient, just wait for them. So it
Sure.
kind of depends on what the property is too. Sometimes you get people that are going to walk right by you and interrupt stuff, and it's like, well, maybe I'll move over a little bit, try something
Sure.
different. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's about all we got for time. Um, I know Linda joined us here. She does the bowl program. I don't know, Linda, if you want to pop on real quick and mention the spring turkey hunt. I don't even know if you still have openings for that.
I did. I, the hunt for this year is full, but we'll be doing it again next year. So we there's a whole series of classes that we have that women who haven't turkey hunted before teach you how to shoot a bow first, and then how to shoot broadheads, and then what to look for in a compound bow, and go to a 3D shoot. So we really get you ready for the hunt, and then we stick you out in the blind with a mentored someone who's hunted before. So it's really a great program and a great way to learn. So we are full for this year. The hunt is coming up right soon here in April 24 to 26, but look for us next year if you're interested in that. You can reach out to me.
Thanks, Linda. So,
Sure.
all right, everybody, get outside, enjoy the beautiful spring weather. Hopefully, you get out hunting. If not, get out and listen to some birds, look for birds. You can always report uh, bird sightings to friends that like hunting because we always like to know where they are, right? So, join us a couple weeks, April 22nd. We're going to have our 236th episode on the native fish of Minnesota right before the fishing opener. Well, a couple weeks before the fishing opener. So, everybody get outside, enjoy the beautiful weather, be safe, and share it with somebody new if you can. So thanks, everyone. We